Hi, Dave Diggle here again from the Smart Mind for another 5-10 minutes with your time on how we get to use performance psychology and mental performance strategies, not for the athlete, but for you, the coach. We're going to go live each day this week to discuss one topic in particular. And these have all been brought to our attention by you, the coaches. So hope you're finding a lot of use in these bits of content that we're putting out here. There's a couple of coaches who reached out yesterday after we did our first one, which was on how do we get athletes to listen, to retain, and then to execute on the information you as a coach are giving your athletes. And the coaches that reached out yesterday wanted to know, how do we build that collaboration? Because we spoke about getting the athlete to collaborate and understand the value in the information you're giving them. And an athlete's coming from a place of pain and frustration. You as a coach are coming from a place of education. And because they're slightly different, then sometimes the athlete will struggle to see the value in the skills that you're trying to impart on them. That was a really good question. And we had a bit of a back and forth on different ways to do that. What I would say is at the end of this week, we are going to have a Q&A on Sunday. So those kind of questions are really great to bring along to that forum. We're going to spend about 45 minutes with you guys and answer any questions you have, whether it be about the topics I bring up this week or anything else. So at the end of this, I'll give you the address to register for that. Today, we're going to look at how do we as coaches manage athletes who are underperforming or are difficult athletes that are not necessarily following the program. Two of those are very, very different challenges for us as a coach. So let's look at the first one, which is athletes that are underperforming. Coaches coach for a reason. We coach because we're people. We want to help them. We want to get in there. We want to get those athletes to achieve and reach their goals. And because we're trying to do that, often we can get sucked into spending so much time with them, trying to get them up to speed. When an athlete isn't performing, particularly during training, it can have a massive knock-on effect to the rest of the team, rest of the group. So as a coach, you might kind of want to get in there and bring them up to speed so that it makes your job as a coach a lot easier, because the information that you're giving is coming across to everybody. You're not having to try and adjust the information for somebody who's maybe lagging behind a little bit. So it makes sense. It makes logical sense, but it's not necessarily the best strategy. In the years that I've been working on the mental performance of athletes, I've learned a huge lesson, which is I can't do it to them and I can't do it for them, but I will do it with them. And having that ethos that the athlete has to bring their part of this journey to the front, as well as me giving them the skills and the framework, it has to be that collaboration. It's the same for coaches too. So when I get called in, typically by a coach who will say, I need you to come and help this athlete that's struggling on, they might have a mental block, or they might have a fear or performance anxiety, or they just might not be performing at the level that they were or can do. And we'll sit down collectively. I'll have the athlete, I'll have the coach, myself, and depending on the athlete's age, maybe even the parents. And I'll say to the athlete, right, challenges that athlete's having, where it's showing up that they're not performing the way they want to perform. And my first statement to them is, what do you need to see, hear, or experience to move this forward? And how do you want to move it forward? And often I can hear the parents go, because I'm giving control to the athlete. I can see or feel the coach's eyes like glaring at me, kind of saying, well, no, I don't want it to be driven by the athlete. That's why we are where we are. I need somebody to come in here and help them along. And that's exactly what I'm doing. By empowering the athlete to come up with a solution themselves, to highlight the path that they want to travel to get through the challenges they're having, I've already got some kind of buy-in. If I walk in and say, right, what we're going to do is A, B, C, and D, then it's my journey and I'm trying to get them on my path. And often that's going to come with resistance, particularly if the athlete is incredibly frustrated that they're not performing. So by empowering the athlete, a couple of things happen. One, as I say, we get that buy-in, so there's less resistance. Two, us as coaches have to spend less time away from the rest of the group in that moment with that athlete. So the rest of the group aren't necessarily being impacted by this athlete who's having some challenges with their performances. So by doing that, by asking the athlete, by collaborating with them and saying, okay, we know what the challenges are here. We know why you're not performing. What's the path that you want to choose to move forward? How does that look like to you? And what's your timeline? Because an athlete, if they turn around and say to you, yeah, I've got no timeline, it takes as long as it takes, then you diving in and trying to fix that for them in the moment just means you're probably going to be away from the rest of the group for longer. But if the athlete turns around and says to you, look, I'm really keen, I want to get this done, I want to get back on track really, really quick, then you're already creating that momentum with the athlete. Okay, cool. What do you need to see? How do you need to do that? So by empowering the athlete to be solution orientated and come to you with a plan, there's already momentum and motion put in play. As a coach, as I said, we have this propensity to want to get in there and fix, to get in there and orchestrate and control that next step for the athlete. And as I say, that's a challenging place for you as a coach. It's frustrating for the rest of the team because your attention is being put somewhere where they're not getting the benefit from. But it's also disempowering that athlete because you're going to train them to wait for you to come in and fix it every time. If they're a young athlete, then we may need to coax that solution-based thinking. Once they hit their mid to late teens, they should be coming to you with those solutions. Certainly once they hit their 20s, without a doubt, our first response as coaches should always be, all right, if that's your challenge, come to me with a plan. Tell me what you need to do. Tell me how this works so that we have that symbiotic relationship. Tell me what you need from me and I'll tell you what I need from you. And the athlete then will feel like they've got a hand on the steering wheel, they're driving their bus, and we are there conducting the journey with them. So that's when an athlete is struggling, and us as coaches have that urge to jump in and fix it for them. We've got to learn as coaches to be able to step back and go, okay, I want you to own this. I want you to own not only the journey, but I want to own the outcome. So you need to come to me with some solutions here. What if the athlete is underperforming in competition? So come game day, there's a different version of that athlete turning up. They're training like champions, but coming to competition, and that's completely different. It's still about empowerment, to be honest with you. And when we go to competition, we want the athlete to go transition from student mode into performer mode. Performer mode should be the most simple mode that an athlete is in. When they're in student mode, they're learning things, they're pushing boundaries, they're trying new things. So that's actually quite a challenging place for an athlete to be. Certainly a challenging place for an athlete to build trust. And we need to be able to build trust. So it goes from our overthinking prefrontal cortex to our subconscious into flow state. So the athlete needs to be able to trust it. And that's where during our training process, our preparation process, there needs to be an increasing degree of performer mode mindsets in training. So I always say we've got to have a bit of competition inside every single training session so we can have our trained version in competition. So that conduit needs to be consistent. When I'm working with athletes and I take them through the funnel process, down the side of that funnel process is percentages, percentage of student mode, percentage of performer mode. And that percentage of student should decrease and that percentage of performer should increase as you get closer to the competition. And the reality is, by the time you get to the day before a competition, if you're still in student mode, then you've not done your job right. So we want to get them to that point where the familiarity of performing, we can see if they're not ready to perform or they're not performing at their best long before they get to the competition venue. So as coaches, our job is to see the patterns before they happen. And having this process, that funnel process, allows us as coaches to collect that data along the path. So for me, that's a really important concept for coaches to have, because having been a coach, I get it. We get consumed with how's the routines going? Are their skills up to par? Or how are they playing with the team in preparation? Are they communicating? Are they kicking the ball? Are they whatever it is, whatever sport you're in? And we can get consumed with the physicality and the technical aspects of the sport, where you and I know the day of competition, if they're not mentally prepared, then they're not going to perform. And that's a frustrating part for us as coaches. The other side of that is us as coaches, we got to stop coaching. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the reality is the night before a competition, we take our coach's hat off and we put our supporter hat on. And when we go into a competition venue, people often ask me, Dave, when you go to your athletes' competitions or games, are you nervous? And I always no. When I get to that point, I can't be nervous, because if I'm nervous, I haven't done my job. So I know that if we get to the night before the competition and they've ticked all the boxes in their funnel, they're ready to perform. So I get to go and enjoy the game or the competition. So that's great for me. I love it. So as a coach, we got to get to that same state of trust in the athlete. If we don't trust them, they're not going to trust themselves. So having that conversation with them that, hey, it's the day before the competition. You've done everything you need to do. You're physically, technically, and mentally prepared. I'm going to take my coach's hat off. I'm going to put my supporter's hat on. I'm going to be there tomorrow just to cheer you on. You don't need me. I'm just there to see what we've built and you to execute that. So they're the two sides, whether it be preparation or performance. If an athlete is underperforming, they're two different strategies. Empowerment of the solution if things aren't working in training, and empowerment to perform at competition. So those two great strategies. What if the athlete's just being a difficult athlete and they're not necessarily being conducive of how you coach or the team dynamic or the team culture? That's a much bigger challenge. And it comes back to the DNA, and not the DNA of the athlete, but the DNA of the sport and the club. So when you build a team, you've got to build the DNA. How do we do what we do? How do we train together? How do we prepare together? How do we perform together? Even if they're an individual athlete, understanding the DNA of you and your group will allow you to see, same thing, early warning systems. If that athlete isn't being part or forming part of that DNA, the likelihood is when they get put under pressure, they're going to separate. Humans are pack animals. And whereas we like to think we're in certain kinds of packs, it's not until we get put under pressure and we react to the moment that we see the true colors of what pack we're in. And if an athlete is sitting on the peripheral of the pack, the likelihood is under pressure, they'll separate. And this will see they'll become a difficult athlete. They won't listen to you as a coach. They'll aggravate the rest of the team. They'll look to be the center of attention or to point out things that aren't working, but never see the things that are working. So getting an athlete to understand the DNA will help you formulate the team culture. And because we are pack animals, if somebody's bought into that DNA, they'll be more bought into being part of that pack. So they're going to be less likely to be a challenging athlete. They're more likely to be conducive and listen and be part of that process that you're building. So there's a lot of different ways to be able to see an athlete's behavior, and what we as coaches can do to either compound the challenges by sticking our hands and our fingers in things that don't necessarily need our attention, by not empowering the athlete, but by taking the power away and going, I'm going to fix it for you. As coaches, we get frustrated when parents do that, right? When they jump in and they say, no, I'll be there and I'll fix Johnny's problem, or I'll be there and I'll fix Sarah's problem. No, we want parents to step out and we want to empower the athlete. Looking at ourselves as coaches, we got to do exactly the same thing. Am I empowering the athlete, or am I disempowering them by doing everything for them? And obviously, when you've got a challenging athlete, we want to bring them into the fold. We want to make sure that they feel part of our team, of our dynamic, and part of our DNA. Asking them, collaborating with them, and what we spoke about yesterday, making them aware of the value, is also part of the DNA. If they don't see the value in the DNA, the way that we do what we do, then they're going to find resistance to that. They're going to look to, how do I get out of this? So I hope that's helped you as a coach understand, if I've got an athlete who's not performing, if it's in preparation, then I've got to get them part of the solution. If it's in performance, then I've got to prepare them better to be in that performer mode, and then step away and give them the power to perform. If it's part of them just being a challenging athlete and not want to be part of our process, if we can sell it to them in the way that they want to be part of that DNA, then fantastic. Sometimes we have to cut them. If we have to cut them because they're just looking for every opportunity not to be part of that, then it's probably better for them if they go and find a pack that they want to be in. And that can sometimes be really, really difficult to hear. But I've had to have that conversation numerous times with athletes of that, you know what? The way that you want to learn isn't how they teach here. You might want to find somewhere that's going to teach you the way that you learn. So I hope that's given you a concept of how you can, as a coach, can better empower your athletes. On Sunday, we're going to have the Q&A for any coach. No athletes, no parents, no support crew. It's just for you coaches. So if you're finding these little tidbits of information are stimulating more and more questions, then bring them along. It's completely free. I'm going to spend 45 minutes of my time with you guys. Any question you have, look, if you keep having questions, I'll stay as long as it takes. But head over to smartmind.com/coach, register so I know how many people are turning up, and bring your questions with you, making sure that if there's things that you want to learn, the things that you know you can do better as a coach, we'll teach those to you. Now, I know I said to you yesterday that today was all about motivation. I got it wrong. Motivation's tomorrow. So tune in tomorrow, 1:30, exactly the same time as we were today. I'll go live here on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and we're going to look at motivating athletes. And it's not what you think. Hope you have a great day. I look forward to seeing you here again tomorrow. My name's Dave Diggle from The Smart Mind. See you here tomorrow.